charged me to be a good knight.
To defend the weak and the innocent.
The making of a true knight. Before Jon Snow was born, before Daenerys ever dreamed of dragons, there was another tale, a story not of kings or conquerors, but of a hedge knight and his bald-headed squire. Fact, 90 years before Game of Thrones, Westeros was ruled by House Targaryen, and peace hung by a thread of silver hair. But history often forgets the small men who change it, and one of them was called Dunk, a nobody from the streets of Flea Bottom. He wasn't highborn, he wasn't clever, he wasn't even sure he was a real knight, yet the choices he made would ripple through generations, shaping the rise and fall of dragons themselves. When Dunk picks up his master's sword and swears to live as a knight, he begins a journey that will test what honor really means. Because in Westeros, where oaths are broken and blood is currency, knighthood isn't about shining armor or noble birth. It's about courage, compassion, and the will to stand up to power. This is the forgotten story of Dunk and Egg, and how one humble knight without a name forged a legacy that would outlive kings. A sword for Sir Arlan. The sun was just breaking over the hills when Sir Arlan of Pennytree died. For years, Dunk had followed him, a squire, a servant, a shadow with a wooden sword. Together they rode the dusty roads of the Reach, sleeping beneath hedges, fighting for coin and honor. They weren't knights of castles or banners, they were hedge knights, men who carried everything they owned on horseback and lived by their sword. When Sir Arlan's breath finally faded, there was no funeral pyre, no septon, no songs, just Dunk, standing barefoot in the mud, digging a shallow grave. He buried the only man who'd ever treated him like a son. For the first time, Dunk was alone. He wasn't born to a name or a house. He'd grown up in the gutters of Flea Bottom, stealing bread and sleeping beside the rats. Sir Arlan had found him there, tall, raw-boned, half-starved, and turned him into something better. Now Dunk stood with nothing but his master's horse, his armor, and his sword. He looked at that old, chipped blade and whispered the words he'd heard all his life. A knight protects the innocent. A knight keeps his word. And then Dunk made his choice. He would call himself a knight, Sir Duncan the Tall. There was no witness, no blessing, no ceremony. But as Dunk slung the sword across his back and turned toward the horizon, he began the story that would one day echo through Targaryen bloodlines and reach all the way to the wall itself. Because sometimes the truest knights are the ones who never needed a crown's permission to become one. The road to Ashford. The road to Ashford was long, dusty, and filled with dreams. For Dunk, the great tournament there wasn't just a chance to win gold, it was a chance to prove that he belonged, to stand beside true knights, to tilt with honourable men, to show the world that even a boy from Flea Bottom could make something of himself. But first, he needed to get there. The summer sun burned above him. His horse plodded wearily beneath the weight of his borrowed armor, and Dunk's stomach reminded him that dreams didn't fill bellies. That's when he met the boy, small, bald, and barefoot, standing by the road with eyes too sharp for his age. "Take me with you," the boy said. "I'll be your squire." Dunk snorted. "You've got no hair, no shoes, and no manners." The boy grinned. "Aye, but I'm quick with a brush, good with a horse, and better company than silence." He called himself Egg. And though Dunk didn't know it yet, that bald-headed boy would one day become Aegon Targaryen, king of Westeros. Together, they trudged on, the tall knight and the small squire, bound by chance and something deeper neither could name. When they finally reached the fields of Ashford, Dunk's breath caught. Colourful tents shimmered like jewels across the grass. Trumpets blared. Banners of lions, roses, and stags flapped in the wind. This was the world of true knights, proud, polished, and dangerous. Dunk's heart thundered in his chest. He had no noble name, no title, no proof of his knighthood, only a sword, a dream, and a boy who believed in him. The hedge knight had arrived at Ashford, and fate was already waiting in the crowd. The puppet girl and the prince, Ashford was alive with sound and colour. The clang of armour, the laughter of nobles, the scent of roasted meat drifting through the air. To Dunk, it felt like stepping into another world, one of banners, songs, and shining knights who'd never slept beneath a hedge in their lives. He needed a sigil, something to mark his new identity. He found a Dornish girl at a puppet stall, Tanzel, with dark eyes and steady hands, who painted his shield with care. She drew a tall elm tree and a falling star, a symbol Dunk had chosen after seeing a comet blaze across the sky the night Sir Arlan died. "Sir Duncan the Tall," he told her proudly. "That's me." But that night, everything changed. A crowd gathered around Tansel's puppet show, a playful tale of a brave knight slaying a dragon. The people laughed, until a voice cut through the air. "You dare mock dragons?" Prince Aerion Targaryen stepped forward, silver hair gleaming, eyes burning with cruelty. He called himself a dragon, and he didn't take kindly to being slain, even in jest. He smashed the puppets, tore the stall apart, and when Tansel tried to stop him, he broke her fingers. Before Dunk even thought, he moved. He struck the prince square in the jaw. The crowd gasped. The world went silent. A hedge knight had just hit a Targaryen prince, an act punishable by death. As the guards seized him, Dunk caught a glimpse of Tansel's frightened eyes. He didn't regret it. Maybe this was foolishness. Maybe it was madness. But Dunk had always believed that a knight's duty was to protect the weak, even if it cost him everything. And by morning, it would. The Trial of Seven. The morning sun rose over Ashford like the pale eye of a god. In its light, Sir Duncan the Tall stood chained before princes. His crime, striking the blood of dragons. His sentence, death. But Dunk refused to kneel. "I ask for trial by combat," he said, his voice steady, even as his heart thundered in his chest. Prince Aerion smiled, the kind of smile that promised pain. "Then let it be a trial of 7, he declared. 7 champions for me, 7 for you." It was a mockery. A hedge knight against royal blood. No one would stand with him. No one would risk their life for a commoner, until the boy stepped forward. "Egg." "I'll fight for him," the squire said. The hall erupted in laughter, but his words lit something in Dunk, the same fire that had once burned in Ser Arlan's eyes. And one by one, others joined. A few out of honour, a few out of anger at Aerion's arrogance. And then came Prince Baelor Breakspear, heir to the Iron Throne. He placed his hand on Dunk's shoulder. "This man did what a true knight should," he said. "He defended the innocent." The crowd fell silent. The trial was set. When the horns sounded, 14 knights thundered across the field, steel crashing, banners whipping in the wind. Dunk's horse was slain beneath him. He fell, armour sinking into mud. Aerion circled like a viper, sword gleaming. "Do you yield, hedge knight?" Dunk spat blood. "Never." He fought on, raw strength against royal skill, until he pinned Aerion down and brought his gauntlet down again and again. When it was over, the crowd erupted, but victory came at a terrible cost, for even heroes bleed when gods demand a price. Baelor Breakspear falls. The mud was still red when the cheering stopped. Dunk knelt, breath ragged, hands trembling, as the crowd's roar faded into a distant hum. Aerion Targaryen lay broken, his pride shattered, his cruelty silenced. Justice, it seemed, had been done. Then someone called out. Prince Baelor stumbled, his steps uneven, his words slurred. When he reached to remove his helm, his knees gave way, and as Dunk caught him, something heavy and wet slid free. Blood, bone, a glimpse of what once was a prince's mind. The field went silent. Baelor Breakspear, heir to the Iron Throne, the man who had stood for honour when all others turned away, was dead, struck down not by enemy blades, but by accident, by his own brother Maekar's mace during the chaos of the fight. The gods, it seemed, had a cruel sense of irony. At Baelor's funeral, lords and knights wept. His son Valar, asked the question that no one dared voice aloud. Why would the gods take Baelor for the sake of a hedge knight? Dunk had no answer, only sorrow. When he met Maekar days later, the prince's face was hollow, haunted. He confessed his guilt, his shame, his envy of the brother he had loved and never understood. And Dunk, the boy from Flea Bottom, looked at this broken Targaryen lord and said quietly, "Maybe it'll mean something. Someday. Maybe the realm will need the man Baelor died to save." No one knew then how true those words would be, because the ripples of that death would carry forward, shaping the rise of kings, the birth of dragons, and the fate of a world. A night of humility. The tawny fields of Ashford were quiet now. The tents had come down, the nobles had gone home, and the songs of the bards faded into the wind. But for Dunk, something far greater had begun. Prince Baelor's death changed everything. House Targaryen mourned their brightest star, and Dunk, the nameless hedge knight, carried the weight of it like a second sword. He'd survived, but the price of honor had been blood, grief, and guilt. Prince Maekar found him before he left. "You fought for justice," Maekar said. "For that, you have my respect." He offered Dunk a place among his household knights, safety, food, purpose. But Dunk shook his head. "A hedge knight I was, and a hedge knight I'll stay. The road's my home." He turned to Egg, the bald-headed boy who had stood by him through it all. "If you still want to squire for me, lad, it won't be an easy life." Egg smiled. "I wouldn't trade it." And so the knight and the squire rode on, two wanderers bound by loyalty, humility, and a quiet destiny neither yet understood. Years later, the world would remember them by different names: Sir Duncan the Tall, Lord Commander of the King's Guard, and King Aegon V, the dragon prince who dreamed of peace and died in fire at Summerhall. They would change Westeros forever. And yet, Dunk never sought glory, never asked for songs. All he ever wanted was to do what was right, to live as a true knight, not by birth or blessing, but by heart. Because in the end, it wasn't his strength or stature that made him great. It was his humility, the courage to kneel when every other man reached for a crown. The Song of Small Heroes. Long after the banners of Ashford rotted to dust, the songs of true knights still lingered in the wind. Sir Duncan the Tall, the boy who lied to become a knight, lived and died by the code others only pretended to honor. His sword defended kings, his heart defended the weak, and his sacrifice became a bridge between common men and legends. When Summerhall burned, Dunk's story should have ended there, but his spirit lived on in the courage of those who came after. 90 years later, Brienne of Tarth rode through a world as cruel and broken as his. Mocked for her looks, dismissed for her birth, she carried a shield marked with an elm tree and a shooting star. Dunk's sigil, faded by time, but unforgotten. And when she swore an oath to protect the innocent, when she fought for honor in a land that had forgotten the word, she became proof that Dunk's kind of knighthood never truly dies. In the end, A Song of Ice and Fire is not just about kings or dragons. It's about the small heroes, the humble, the kind, the ones who stand up when no one else will. Sir Duncan the Tall was never crowned, never rich, never sung in golden halls, but when the world needed a true knight, he answered. And that, not fire, not blood, is what makes him immortal.